Strong Dads wants to thank Quality Auto Mart for joining us as a sponsor. Quality Auto Mart was born in 1985. They are owned and operated by Mark and Nancy Repke. Quality Auto Mart provides all the services, repairs, and maintenance for your vehicle's needs with a 3-year auto parts and labor warranty. They offer complimentary vehicle safety inspection and estimates. Also, they offer a shuttle service, and the 4th oil change is always on them. They are located at 7307 on State Road 46 in Batesville, Indiana. Make sure you give them a call at 812-934-2301.
Welcome to Strong Dads. This is Merle Hutchinson. I'm getting ready to bring you another great show. We are in part 9 or week 9 of our parables. These are parables from the Son, and this is kind of our summer series. So we just want to thank you guys for hanging in there with us this summer. Hopefully you've had a good summer. I know at least in our neck of the woods, it's not been all that hot. I know the rest of the nation's always, they're talking on the news like the world's burning up. Hey, I don't know, maybe it's super hot, but in our area, it's not been too bad. Hopefully in your area, you've been able to enjoy some of that summer sun and getting out and just enjoying the family and that kind of thing. So, well, I'm hoping that you're taking some time. I'm trying to do the parables this summer and keeping them kind of short and sweet. So most of these have been 10 to 15 minutes long. And it's just something that, you're quick buzzing to work, whatever, you're walking around, doing something around the house, just to make you think. That's all. Because all these parables are stories that you've either heard multiple times or they've been woven in daily life. These are principles that are nothing new, and they are principles that Christ gave us that basically point us to living God's way instead of our way. And so that's going to be no different than today's story. And so before I get started into that, we're going to thank our sponsors. We want to thank Quality Auto Mart and Casey's Outdoor Solutions for sponsoring the Strong Dads podcast. So for all of your landscape needs, check out Casey's Outdoor Solutions. And for all your automotive needs, mechanical and otherwise, check out Quality Auto Mart. All right. So, let me get started right off the get-go here, and we're going to do the parable of the Good Samaritan, okay? And man, this particular parable, especially in today's age, rings loud and clear. And, in this world that we live in where we're constantly canceling each other, working our prejudices against each other, and then thinking that we're not prejudiced or that we don't have some sort of pushback against other races or creeds or religions. It's time to wake up because it's pretty obvious this is not a new problem from this particular parable. So I'm going to read the Good Samaritan, and this is out of Luke 10, verses 25 through 35. And let me read it, and then let's break it down a little bit to see how we can apply it to our lives today. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. "Teacher," he asked, "what must I do to inherit eternal life?" "What is written in the law?" he replied. "How do you read it?" he answered. "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind, and love your neighbor as yourself." "You have answered correctly," Jesus replied. "Do this and you will live." But he wanted to justify himself, so he asked Jesus, "And who is my neighbor?" In reply, Jesus said, "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he was attacked by robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest happened to be going down the same road, and when he saw the man, he passed by on the other side. So too a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed by on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring in oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, brought him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 denarii and gave them to the innkeeper. Look after him, he said, and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have. Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of the robbers? The expert in the law replied, the one who had mercy on him. Jesus told him, go and do likewise. All right. So there we go. That's the story. I'm sure that you've heard it before. And so let's just talk about some of the different components of this. First off, it's pretty interesting that this guy was an expert in the law, so we might refer to them as a lawyer, okay? And listen, there are people who have the title lawyer, but then there are people who have the mindset of a lawyer, and that is to always question things, and not just to question to learn, but question to see where the holes in the learning could be. In other words, in the legal world, they might refer to it as loopholes. Are there any loopholes? Are there any ways that I can kind of cheat this a little bit to get something towards my favor rather than against me? Are there any shortcuts? How can I get around this? And so right away, this lawyer guy, this guy who's an expert in the law, is already working it, okay? And Jesus is no dummy, so he's picking up on this right away. And so as he's picking up on this, Jesus doesn't answer the question with an answer. He answers with a question, okay? And so that's a really great thing to do, to say, well, what do you think? You know, rather than you asking me what you think the answer is, you already kind of have a predetermined answer. So tell me what it is that you think, all right? And so Jesus is pretty wise to this whole idea here. And then he goes and the lawyer says, okay, well, who is my neighbor though? Because, you know, it's not just anybody. I wouldn't have to help just anybody. And so that's where the story comes about who we're going to love. And this is the part where we go, I don't know if I could love that guy. All right. And then so Jesus gives some examples of people who walk by the guy who was beat. All right, the guy who was on his journey, and so he gets beat and robbed. And so the first guy is the priest. And so this is a religious leader. This is a guy who he's supposed to help the traveler. Like, he's supposed to know what the right thing to do is. But due to feeling uncomfortable, maybe not safe, some built-in prejudices, he's like, I'm going to just look the other way. And the priest just walks by, okay? And then you have the Levite. And so the Levite, a Levite, they ran the temples back in the Jewish day, okay? And so they knew all of the right protocols and the rules and how things are supposed to operate within the Jewish temple. And so they knew all of the right way that something should be done, the physical way that something should be done. But obviously, even in this case, he didn't know the heart of the matter. He didn't want to explore that. In other words, this was out of his protocol understanding of how he could help. And so even this guy kind of fails the test. And then you got this Samaritan. Now, here's what's interesting. The Samaritans were a rejected, I'll say, group or race of the Jews. The Jews felt like the Samaritans were basically trash. They were people who either Jews that left the Jewish faith or Jews that married out of the Jewish culture, and they were people who were open to practice paganism and just things outside of the Jewish way, the Jewish faith. And so they were kind of thrown out, so to speak, from the Jewish way. So in other words, they're slime, all right? And here, this guy who's supposed to not even be worthy of the culture, This guy walks down the street and he sees the traveler who's been beat and robbed, and he takes on a completely different approach because he's not carrying a prejudice. He's not carrying some sort of some boundary on this guy. He just sees this as a hurting person. This traveler's a hurting person. And so right away, he goes over and it says that he shows pity. He has pity on him, okay? And so the idea here is, what's keeping us blocked from serving and claiming who our neighbor actually is? Do you go over to the other side of the tracks, or do you put barriers on that? Do you understand what empathy is? In other words, that compassion by looking through somebody else's eyes or walking in their shoes. And this is what Christ is telling us. Your neighbor is anybody out there. Your neighbor could be, in other areas, could be an enemy, right? Could be somebody that you don't like. And Christ is saying here, if you see a need, I'm asking you to address it. How are you doing at addressing the needs of others? I need to look in the mirror personally. How am I doing? It's so easy for me. I would say I would be the guy who would walk down the street and just act like I don't see anything on the other side. Or I would dismiss it. I would be like, oh, well, they'll get their cell phone out. They can call somebody to help them. I don't see any cell phones in this particular story, but you get the idea. I could create a rationalization that would keep me from treating this person as a neighbor in need. And so this is how I have created myself into this this way that is opposing the way of Christ. So I ask you, how are you doing in that? What do you know about compassion? What do you know about showing mercy? What do you know about being selfless instead of selfish? So these are the things that come up in the story of the Good Samaritan, all right? I'd also swing back around to, let's talk about the lawyer here. How often are you and I trying to create loopholes in a host of different kind of behaviors? Well, it's okay to do this if this is the situation, but maybe not if this is the situation. I can't tell you how many times I've tried to cheat something because I could rationalize it in my mind. Hey, you know what? It's going to cost me $1,000, but if you pay me in cash, how about $600? And I go, well, that's really a better deal for both of us. And I rationalize. I look for the loophole. All right. And so Christ is really trying to get us to pour through this and say, quit trying to slice and dice this so it fits your way. How about make it fit my way? And this is just something I think all of us need to constantly really kind of recycle back through and see how well we're aligned with God's way. All right. So anyway, that's about what I've got for you today. The Good Samaritan is really talking about who our neighbors are, and they're really anybody out there. And especially if we recognize that there's somebody out there that's in need, rather than me having judgment on their need, just serve their need. And listen, if their need is that they are abusing it, so we might see this in a situation where somebody's out begging out alongside the highway or the interstate, and they're saying, hey, need food or whatever, as they hold up their sign. My judgmental side has been guilty of this more than a few times of hey, he just needs to get a job. And what I'm trying to practice more of is, I just need to see his need. And if he may be abusing that in some way, that's going to be between him and God. And again, not at the point of being totally ignorant, not at the point of just throwing money or food or whatever it is freely out the window without thought, but the idea of me making sure that I'm not trying to be the God in this situation, the judge, in the situation. Let God be the judge, and let me just recognize the needs. So anyway, hope that makes sense to you. Guys, thanks for hanging out here with Strong Dads. Again, we want to thank our sponsors, Quality Auto Mart and Casey's Outdoor Solutions. So if we can help you guys in any way, please don't hesitate. You can check out the Rock Solid Families website at rocksolidfamilies.org. Also, feel free, if you're struggling with a challenge in your life as a man and you're just tired of the battle or you're overwhelmed by it, don't hesitate. Give me a call at 812-576-7625. We'll see what we can do to help you out or get you hooked up or directed into the right place that you can get the help that you need. Otherwise, guys, I just want to thank you for listening, and why don't you go out there and be a strong dad. Casey's is a premier garden center and gift shop located in Lawrenceburg, Indiana. Casey's offers a wide selection of plants, landscaping materials, home and garden decor, and gifts for every occasion. Casey's is committed to providing exceptional service, a unique shopping experience, and value to every customer. Stop in and see what makes Casey's so unique. Located at 21481 State Line Road, Lawrenceburg, Indiana, or call 812-537-3800. Let Casey's help you add beauty to your home.